Hello and welcome to Module 6, Video Storytelling or Visual Storytelling and Storyboards. And what we're focusing on in this particular presentation is some of the fundamentals of television, commercial, or video storyboards. It's a great way to tell a story. It's, as the name implies, very focused on the visual. And it's fun. It's fun to do as well. Before we get totally into the technique, a few things. We talked about this with radio, audio. So some of the strengths and weaknesses of video or television, in this case, is a big strength is it allows for active demonstration. You can see a demonstration, a demo of whatever product or even service or the benefit. You can visualize the benefit, and if you pay attention, if you watch just a few minutes of commercials, chances are you're going to see a demonstration, whether it's how great a car can turn or brake, or how it looks, to whether a diaper leaks or not. You name it, you're going to see a demonstration. Sometimes they're very artfully done and entertainingly done, but they're still focused on demonstrating something that the product does visually. And as hard as you may try in radio, it's very difficult to show that demonstration, but less so when you have pictures. And video television also has a high impact potential, meaning it can here in the U.S. It can make a bigger splash. It has the power to invoke a lot of your senses related to the next point, which is multi-element. There's sound, there's motion, there's color, there's text on screen, there's even the vibrations of the sounds. All of these elements connect with people and activate, engage many senses, less or more so than certainly than radio or even social media. And because of that, it has a high impact potential. It has more ways to engage emotion. And then finally, one of the strengths of television is that it is mobile friendly. Mobile has become a visual medium as well, and much TV, not all of it, but a lot of the work that's done in television and video transfers very nicely or works very well with a mobile experience. Now, some of the weaknesses of video TV on many levels, it tends to require a long lead time, meaning there is a lot of scheduling to be done, a lot of, it's called trafficking, sending commercials out, scheduling time, producing. Some commercials take up to a year to get done, especially some of the more advanced animations are wildly involved and wildly complicated. It requires a long lead time, and sometimes the commercial gets out there and then the product is almost dead at that point. So it requires a long lead time. High production costs. Now, not all television, but it is almost always more expensive than radio, and the television commercials you see, like maybe some of the Super Bowl spots or those more famous spots, they tend to cost a lot of money, like small motion picture budgets. The payoff is great, but the cost is also great. And I alluded to this with the long lead time. It's very expensive to buy time on television. Even local television, comparatively speaking, is an expensive endeavor. And so tends to be an issue, certainly if you don't have the budget. And then finally, because it's so expensive, there's limited time for details. The visual and the words that you hear have to work especially hard to get enough information out there. And that's why we lean heavily on the videos and the visuals and the demonstrations, etc., is because other than that, you can't explain something too much. You basically have to show it and move on because your time is very, very limited. Speaking of time, a typical, for a copywriter, a typical time for television video tends to be the 15, 30-second, and 60-second length, although the 60-second is becoming much, much more rare nowadays because of the cost. Now, of course, web videos do vary greatly, but as I said, because of the nature of sharing video between broadcast and social, they tend to still work in similar chunks of time, 15, 30, and minute-long videos. Now, as far as how the visual storytelling works within the process of an agency experience, we looked at this flow from kickoff to actual production, and where we are playing basically in this class from the creative brief to the creation to a form of presentation, and where storyboards are a particularly effective tool for helping more people understand the concept and the idea and the possible potential of the work. It happens, yes, in the creative development and also in the validation and testing, essentially getting some visuals in front of people to see truly how they engage in it, whether they like it or not. In the creative process, we had an overview there, and we looked at how Hershey handled a particular spot in a very simple 4-point process. When you're talking about video and visual storytelling, again, the creative development and the validation testing, that is where the power of a storyboard tool comes into play. Now, let's have a look at the storyboard in and of itself. When it's on paper, it's called, again, a storyboard. And when it's in a video form, it's often called an animatic. And you'll see an example of that soon. And while there are many variations of storyboard, some of the finer points may be a little different. Almost all storyboards share certain things. One, it has a somewhat of a comic strip approach. So if you look at comic books or comic strips in the newspaper or wherever, basically a visual panel and some words, and that kind of helps you understand what's going on. Now, let me see if this works here. Okay. Now you see the boxes, those big boxes, those are basically what you see on the screen. And the words below, or the copy, indicates action, what you hear, what the characters say, and so on. So, but to put it in as simple of a way as possible, the boxes are what you see, and the words below it are what you hear. You really can't go too wrong after that. Now, in this class, we're using a 8-frame storyboard. There are other ways to do it, 6 or what have you, number of frames. But this is a great way to work out an essentially a 30-second spot. You can kind of get a sense of how many seconds each frame may take. It's good. It's just enough to get enough detail, and it's not particularly totally detailed. One thing I should say about this, it is a storyboard for presentation. Now, the deeper you get into production and the more extensive the production, you might get a shooting board, which is very has a lot of detail and camera angles and timing and etc. But for our purposes, we just simply want it to be simple and a way to tell this basic story of the concept that you have and how it may turn out to be the concept that you want to see when you're watching a television or a phone or a computer monitor. And again, what you see in the big box, what you hear in the various lines below that. Now, there are templates available in this assignment. They're in the links below. Once you click on the assignment. And provided a PowerPoint, a Keynote, and a PDF version of that. If that between the three of those, you should be able to find something that works for you. I do want to say, not looking for any sort of art direction expertise. Don't want that to get in the way. What I want to do is just to help you find a way to express your story idea in a visual way. Whether those visuals are stick figures or visuals borrowed from Google Images, or if you take some pictures and put them in there, that doesn't matter too much. But what I would like you to do is to play around and explore what it's like to tell a visual story. Now, as I alluded to, storyboards, when they're on paper, they're called storyboards. And sometimes in the process of developing a commercial, the idea will go from a storyboard to basically a very, very crude animation, or what we call an animatic or a boardomatic, but animatic is great. And that is basically those frames roughly timed out with some rough audio underneath it to give the approver, sometimes that is the client, sometimes that is an internal creative director or art director, it gives them a better sense of how this might work. And sometimes you create an animatic just to prove a concept, to make sure it kind of works, because what sometimes works in your head and works in real life, sometimes they're very different. Now, a great example of that is in the link below. I noticed in a lot of your submissions and various students, there were a lot of Star Wars themes, which is great. Awesome. So here is an example of an animatic, a storyboard that got turned into an animatic and then turned into an actual spot. So enjoy and have fun with your assignment, which is focused on storyboard and telling a nearly all visual story. All right. Thanks a lot.